Okay, I just did this video to show how to make a wafer paper sunflower with a wafer paper center, and I'm going to show you how to make the wafer paper centers now because this is so simple. It was really easy. It just has to have time to dry, that's all. So I would start with brown wafer paper, but if you don't have that, you can always make it in white or a different color and then brush it with some petal dust once you're done. Or you can use food coloring because this really is very hard. It's just hard as a rock when you're done with them, and it's easy to kind of, use the food coloring that ordinarily might melt it, but it's not going to happen. So take any flower center mold that you have. This one everybody has. I've seen this in a million places, being sold in different places. Let me move this down a little bit, and actually let me get a close-up. Okay. All right, so you want to cut the wafer paper that you're using, and I'm just using old scrap paper that's old and it's drying out. I'm not going to use it for anything. So you would use brown or yellow, whatever color you want the center to be. Just wet it and then press it into the mold, into the flower center former. And don't worry if it pops up, because it's going to pop up. You don't need it to be soaking wet. If it gets too wet, it's going to melt, and that's okay, but it's better if it kind of keeps its shape. And the circles that you're cutting out should be a little bit bigger than the size of the cavity that you're using. So you could use any of these. I used the smaller one here to make this one, and oops, it comes out, just a smaller flower. So you can do this for any types of centers if you're making, wafer paper daisies or whatever. Any flower that has a center that is flat, you can use this. Okay, so just keep layering, and you can do as many layers of this as you want, but I would do about 4 or 5 before you put the wire in, because you want it to be pretty thick, and you don't want the wire to show through. It doesn't really matter if it's colored, what side you put, other than the first layer that's going to be on the outside, you want the color to be down. Like, well, this is colored on both sides apparently, but once you get into the center, it doesn't really matter if the colored side is down or up. And as you're putting them on top of each other, just keep pressing it so that it's going to kind of take the shape of the mold. It's not really going to have that impression, but the point of putting it in here is just really more for the size than anything else. Okay. All right, so once you get, this is probably 6 or 7 layers because I kept talking while I was doing this. You're going to take your wire and bend it like an L first. I'll hold it up against my sweater. Bend it like an L, and then, or kind of hook it. You're going to make a hook, and then you're going to bend the hook so that the hook is flat like that. Because this is what's going to sit on top of the flower in the center of it, and you want it to be kind of wide enough that it's going to grab onto the center and be sturdy enough that you can pick it up. So put that flat on there, and you're going to take another piece of wafer paper. That's probably going to fall over. That's okay. Wet another piece of wafer paper and slide it over the hook like that so that it grabs onto the hook. So now the hook is in between. Oh, I can never find the camera. The hook is in between. It's in there, but it's in between the 2 pieces of paper. So it's pretty well attached. And you might want to do a couple more layers. The more you do on the back, the sturdier it's going to be, and the less likely it will be that the hook rips out. So I'll do one more. Obviously, this does not have to be a precise circle. It just has to be large enough that it covers the space, and you want it to be wet all over, not soaking wet, but just damp enough that it's going to stick to itself. Okay, so now I've got this. Let me move this over here. Right there. All right. So I've got this, and I'm still pressing it down so that it's going to keep the shape of the little cavity. And I'm going to take some more water and put it on the inside and kind of the outside of the edge of the petal. I mean the paper. It's not a petal. And then I'm going to turn this over and kind of press it into the mold so that the outside edge sticks to the inside, but it keeps the shape of the cavity. Now, like I said, you're not going to get a tremendous amount of detail from this, but it will be the right size, and you will get some detail. Okay, so now I folded this over. The little hook is wiggling around. So I'm going to take maybe a couple more layers. I'll just fold this in half and cut one more. This one I'm going to make smaller so that it fits inside that shape, because at this point you don't want anything sticking out. So let's attach these two together. Oops. Okay, and then I'm going to add one more layer on the back of this. So you have 5 or 6 layers that are going to be on the top of the center, and 4 or 5 on the back. It just depends on how strong you want this to be. When this dries, it's going to be pretty strong, and you'll be able to feel the little hook in there. I'll take this. The more paper you have on the back, the stronger that's going to be. And just cut that off. It's wafer paper, you can cut it. Alright, so once you're done, you can either leave that in the little cavity, or you usually can take it out. Now see, in this case the wire is showing through, so that's not necessarily great. I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah, see right in the middle there, the wire showing through. But that's okay, because you can go back and paint it when you're done. And where this little edge is showing here, you could go back and just bring that down, fold it in toward the center. That was the little extra pieces that I put on, so I just made them a little too big. But that's okay, because it's paper and you'll be able to cut it off. So either leave this in the shape like that, which is probably the best way to do it, just to keep it in one place while it dries. Let it dry. It's not going to take that long, depending on what your humidity is. I made a couple of these yesterday, and they only took about 20 minutes to dry. But it's really dry here right now. But that's how you do this, and when you're done, they firm up. They're hard. It's just layers and layers of wafer paper. It's the right shape, it's the right size, and you do get a little bit of the impression if you're close enough. I don't think you can probably see it. If you're close enough, you can see that there is a little bit of the impression of the mold, but doing it in this is more just to get the size and the right shape. And it does give you a light center that wafer paper will attach to, so it's very good for doing the center of the flowers like that. And just start with the color that you want is the easiest way to do it. But you can color them, like I said, afterwards if you have to. So leave me any questions and watch the other video that shows how to attach the petals. And these are actually, if you haven't watched the other video yet, these are petals of a sunflower that I printed out onto wafer paper and then cut out and attached. So you can do it that way. I might list them. I think I had some petals listed for lilies in my shop, but I don't have these listed at this point. If I do decide to list them, I'll put a link in the description of this video, but you can just use regular yellow and orange petal, like flowers, and cut out the petals from that. You don't need something printed. So that's all. Leave me any questions and I will be glad to answer them.